But about that National Assembly bit where you say they've completely been silent, I think it was just a couple of days ago when it was the Senate that raised that. In fact, it was in The Guardian. And they did say 2019 election was in danger. And true to them, and fair to them actually, it was the Deputy Senate President, Ike Ekweremadu, who also did talk about the fact that, with the absence of 20 resident electoral commissioners out of 36, that's dangerous. And in fact, he went on to say that is in clear breach of Section 14, subsection 2 of the 1999 Constitution. So they have been speaking about it. But I'm looking through Twitter and I see some other persons who think that you're not being entirely objective in this matter. If you want to reform or change, do you bring a carpenter? And that you haven't seen anything good in the government. Perhaps that's why you have this opinion.
Well, while they are entitled to their opinion, and I wouldn't want to join issues with people who feel otherwise, but let us be a little bit objective. And by that I'm saying that this government promised change. And to my mind, the change must permeate all fabric of our entire life. If we have a report, a quality report, a report that is not, its integrity is not in doubt by anybody, whether national or international, I am saying that it is only fair for this government to implement that report. If that means that I'm not objective, then so be it. But talking about the National Assembly, it is okay for an individual to raise issues.
It was debated on the floor. Of the Senate.
Debated, but before now, the National Assembly has been quiet on INEC. Recall, the Kogi State election was declared inconclusive. Same in Bayelsa.
Is it the National Assembly's fault? They had a challenge. Or was it INEC's fault themselves?
Well, you see, let's not apportion blames. But let's say that, look, as the watchdog of government, at least that's what the National Assembly claims to be, oversight. It's okay to do oversight in places where issues are less sensitive. But because it's INEC matter, it has to do with political parties. It's okay to look the other way. That's the point I'm making.
What other steps are you expecting them to take other than the one that the Senate?
How many times has the chairman of INEC been summoned to the National Assembly to give explanation on the number of malfeasance that have attended elections in Nigeria?
But if I remember properly, they also had the session wherein they were seeing how they could review the, I think it's the Electoral Act or the Constitution in terms of some of those provisions where they need to sort out. That's also going on.
Well, that's okay. That's okay. But we are saying that they need to take more than a passing interest in what goes on in INEC. Because the way we handle INEC today could make or mar the 2019 general election. And you see, one of the problems that I have observed with this regime is because it's a regime that came into power on popular sentiment. People are circumspect as to how to really engage this government, as to how to call them to order when they are deviating. And that's part of the sentiment. Everybody today who says government needs to do XYZ is branded either as an opposition or somebody who doesn't like government. But you see, to criticize one's government itself is the greatest patriotic act for any citizen to engage in.
So you don't subscribe to those who say, well, yes, it's a 4-year tenure, much as we're not even almost there yet. So if that time comes, we could always take our decision when the time comes.
We've passed 1 year already. And you'd agree with me that in a journey of 4 years, if you've taken one out of it and there are no glimmer of hope in the horizon, you are still moving in a cyclical manner, you are still, conducting yourself as if you are in a circus show.
Is it that you see no improvement whatsoever in INEC so far?
Well, it would be too absolute to say no improvement. But I'm saying that the government of the day needs to do more in strengthening INEC, in putting INEC in a position that INEC will be able to conduct credible, free, fair, and, generally acceptable election.
And how can that happen in the face of what we have seen in recent times? Because for some, they still think that INEC is already an okay organization, an electoral body, but the issue has to do with some electorates and even political parties.
Well, you see, yeah, I agree.
Take, for instance, you're a lecturer and you're conducting an examination. So if you have more than enough cheats in your examination class, that doesn't mean that you're not a good supervisor or invigilator.
Well, there's more to it than a simplistic, analogy like that. What are the steps that you are taking as a lecturer to make cheating almost impossible? What are those decisions that you need to take? These are the issues. Yes, INEC under Jega tried its best, and INEC had, popular support, popular will, because of the personality of Jega, coming from, the background, the belief that, he's credible, he has some measure of integrity and all that. But since Jega left, you will recall that this government committed a constitutional heist by appointing an acting chairman for INEC. Not only that, like I pointed out earlier, the board of INEC is still yet to be properly constituted. Even the man in the saddle, at some point in the mass media, is being described as Mr. Inconclusive Election.
You think INEC has dropped the ball?
I think so, and I think that there's the need to show up. There's the need to take INEC back to the Jega years. I mean, we shouldn't shy away from saying this. And government needs to strengthen INEC. So you can see that there is more to INEC strengthening than INEC as an institution. And that's why we cannot but go back to the WISE report. Because the WISE report touched on the independence of INEC, touched on its funding, touched on so many other extraneous factors that is keeping INEC low. For example, monitoring political parties, their finances, etc. WISE report recommended that all of those should be given to a separate body. And I think if that is done, the state itself could close in better on the way they fund the election. Not only that, the WISE report also, let's have a separate tribunal to try electoral offenses. Even in the recently concluded Edo governorship election, there are so many issues, INEC, political party, etc.
But, I've also heard a lot of people say that even the WISE report, it's not everything that is implementable in that report. You can't start having special tribunal or courts that will try electoral offenses, because if you were to do that for every case, maybe the AFCC has special courts, some other criminal cases you have special courts. You don't solve problems in that kind of manner.
You see, we can, and this is the way it works. You see, there are special offenses. In this country in the past, we had special offenses tribunal. Today in Lagos, you have special courts, mobile courts, to deal with cases as they come.
The mobile courts, you consider them special courts?
What are they? So, if for electoral matters...
Have you actually seen the way trial goes in those mobile courts?
That's another issue. That's another issue that touches on the state itself. Even the way some of these things are conducted. But let's not deviate. The point I'm making is that it is not out of place, given the criticality of electoral offenses and electoral matters in Nigeria. It will not be out of place to do that. And to drive home the point, we are saying that once there's a report, let us implement it, even if not all the recommendations will be implemented. Let government put up, a white paper to say, okay, we have accepted this, we have rejected this. And Duaka and Akunyili tried to do that some time ago. But also it didn't work because they were not being realistic in their assessment.
So what if this committee, when we get to see that terms of reference, they say, well, look, bring all those reports together. In addition to the memorandum you have to consider, and let's get a way forward.
This committee.
What will be wrong with that? Yes.
A lot. A lot. A lot, because there are some unambiguous recommendations. Faultless recommendation.
Are you assuming they are going to jettison those unambiguous?
So if you are not going to jettison that, why set up another committee to got money? Is Buhari, President Muhammadu Buhari, looking for jobs for the boys?
But do we know how they're going to be funded?
Isn't the money going to fund the electoral reform from his pocket? Certainly the state is going to fund it. But also, well, with the funding on one side, the person of, with due reference and due regard to his person, Senator Ken Inamani, distinguished senator as they call themselves, as we know, is a politician, is a card-carrying member of a party. Other members of that committee are known members of the executive, extra members of executive committee of political party, and you are saddling them with the responsibility of recommending electoral reform.
Will that be all of them or some of them?
Majority of them. And one thing that has been celebrated about the Uwais report was because they thought that Justice Muhammad Uwais belonged to, the third arm of government, the judiciary.
Even though the report didn't say how they were going to tackle inconclusive elections, because it's not the fault of
elections and
the regulatory bodies.
Nobody expects that elections will be inconclusive. Inconclusive elections are new vocabulary.
So whatever this committee comes up with, even if they were to come up with solutions to this one, you won't still buy that.
No, you see, if government is hell-bent on my advice is that if it is still possible, they can stop the inauguration today. So that, they could try to implement some of the recommendations of the Uwais report. If after practicing that, implementing that, and we still have problems with the electoral committee, then when you bring up a committee to say, according to you, compile all the recommendations and put a way forward, maybe yes. And then the integrity of people who will reform INEC must be above board. And I think that the coterie of people that have been put together at the moment leaves more to be desired.
Dr. Dele Ashiru is of the Political Science Department, University of Lagos. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much.